I'm trying something a little different because the last time I tried one of these, it was just you, me, and the camera. Now I'm trying something a little different because of certain roadblocks that have stopped me from doing that. For example, I don't have a webcam anymore because the computer that I had with a webcam is away. So I'm making do with what I have. And with that being said, WWE was the only company I wanted to look a year ahead for. I also wanted to look ahead for other companies in the United States, specifically the two other top American wrestling companies, those being Ring of Honor and TNA. This edition of In a Year, where I see in a year, is for TNA Wrestling. Over the last 12 months, TNA has gone through a ridiculous amount of stuff. It seemed like every week something new was going on. And if you go back to last summer, it seemed like it was very possible that we could be saying goodbye to TNA Wrestling. I'm not going to say finally, but like always, TNA came back from the brink and somehow was saved. TNA was saved by Anthem Sports and Entertainment, the current owners of TNA Wrestling. This ownership change gave people a new hope for TNA, that the future would be different and the future would be bright. But then things started to change. Then philosophies started to change. Ideas started to shift. And what worked under Dixie Carter wasn't working anymore with new ownership, specifically those from Anthem who did not want veterans to have creative control. Veterans, however, did not have creative control over matches, they just had creative control over their characters. So they were able to man their characters however they wanted without interference from creative. In my opinion, that is by far the best decision one could make, because the veteran is one of the people, if you learn anything while you're in the wrestling business, let it be that you learn what you can do and what you can't as far as characters go, and who you can portray and who you cannot. And, as a rookie upstart, you can't know that. Unless you have a background in acting, you can't know the type of characters you can and can't portray. A veteran knows what works. I'm not saying all veterans do. I'm saying a veteran who's ran his own company, handled the creative on the company, worked and developed his own characters since the age of 15. I know that they, or in particular he, would be able to have creative control and man his own character and create his own character. Because he's done it for half his life. And then when he retired and stepped away from the ring, he could have helped develop characters to make TNA unique and different from the WWE, because if there's one thing that the WWE doesn't do, is that they don't give people gimmicks. They give people nicknames, not gimmicks. TNA was different. TNA with Robbie E. and Jesse Goddards, with James Storm, Eddie Kingston, and Bram, with a certain tag team. They were different because people had gimmicks. And certain veterans staying with the company until they retired would have helped them have the ability to develop more gimmicks and become more unique and have the ability to become the alternative once again. But they let ego get in the way, and it ain't gonna happen. Now, instead of mentioning those two guys, because those two guys aren't a part of the company anymore. But the reason why I'm bringing those two guys up is because until TNA moves past the mistakes of the past and the misgivings of the past and lets go of the Dixie Carter era, then they can't move forward. The slogan is, make Impact Wrestling great again. You want to make Impact Wrestling great? Move on. Move on. No more references of Dixie Carter. No more references to WWE. No more references to the certain tag team. None. You want to be a winner? Fine. Let it go. Build a bridge and move past everything. You want to bring in Alberto El Patron? Fine. Fine. I have no problem with El Patron coming in. I have no problem with Bobby Lashley being there, with Dutch Mantel being there, with Bruce Pritchard being there. What I have a problem with is all of them reference WWE. All of them reference WWE. Go back to the Monday Night Wars. Go back to the Monday Night Wars. Look at WCW. Look at how many people jumped from WWE to WCW and vice versa. How many promos did they do that mentioned the other? The one promo that sticks out for me is when X-Pac returned to the WWE and mentioned Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. That is the only time I remember on WWE programming outside of the Nacho Man skits with the Huckster and Billionaire Ted. That's the only time I remember them referencing WCW. The WCW? They referenced WWE right after the Monday Night Wars. And you want to say, okay, what about when Tony Schiavone and Eric Bischoff gave away the results? They weren't wrestlers. Schiavone and Bischoff weren't wrestlers. And why they do it? They did it for the fans to stay. Not to compare. Not to make a joke. Not to try and get heat. They did it for the fans to stay. You wanna be successful, don't mention the other company. Because to quote Bill Watts and many other people, you cannot out-Vince Vince. And for those of you watching that think Vince isn't the best, there's a reason why the WWE is the most successful American wrestling promotion in the history of professional wrestling. You might say, oh, they don't listen to the fans. You want to be... You know what? This isn't about WWE. The point is, you want to be a successful wrestling promotion, don't try and be WWE. Don't talk about them. Don't let the announcers talk about them. I know WCW did it, but look where WCW is. I was a fan of WCW when they were a company, but look where they ended up. In Vince's library. Because Vince changed and they didn't. In a year, there are two things that I want TNA to do over the course of the next 12 months. And that is, stop mentioning WWE so much. I don't give a damn if it's Del Rio that mentions them. I don't give a damn if it's Josh Matthews. I don't give a damn if it's Jeremy Borash. Drop it. Drop the mentioning of JR. Drop the mentioning of anybody else, because Jim Ross is not coming to TNA because he re-signed with WWE. Look, I am trying my best to not get pissed off at TNA, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I watched the big episode. I watched the big episode at the beginning of March, and it was frustrating to watch. It was frustrating to watch because, number one, that stupid segment with the Decay finding the tag team titles and transforming from the Hardys into the Decay, and just suddenly, oh, we stole the Hardys machine, and we're the tag team champions now. That's like when Jim Duggan found the television title in the garbage. That's like Jim Duggan finding the TV title in the garbage after Scott Hall threw it away. The best thing to do about that is to retire the titles, because you don't get the titles by finding them, you get the titles by winning matches. Otherwise, what the hell's the point of having a championship if you're not going to get the belt and become the champion the traditional way? And as far as all those references from Bruce Pritchard telling us who he saw when he was working at the WWE, from Dutch Mantel saying he's not Zeb Coulter anymore, to Lashley making a reference to Del Rio being a superstar, Patron being a superstar. Give me a break. The amount of WWE references in that episode did not show that TNA was moving forward. It showed TNA was moving back. Why? Simple. Move forward by not mentioning them. And I don't just mean WWE. I mean, you want to move into a new era? Stop mentioning the old era. Oh, we made mistakes. Everybody knows you made mistakes. You don't have to state the obvious. We know that that TNA was mismanaged. We know that TNA made mistakes in the past. Bad signings. Bad booking decisions. Mistakes. Every wrestling company has made mistakes. Every one of them. WCW, WWE, New Japan, TNA, Ring of Honor, every one of them have made mistakes. But you know what they do? They don't dwell on the mistakes. They move past them. Hell, WWE doesn't move past them. They erase them. They erase the mistakes. Typically they do. Because they try and give the fans something to forget the mistake. TNA doesn't. In the next year, I want TNA to move past the past and move into the future. You want a new era? Forget the old one. TNA's legacy can be built back up, but it needs to start anew. The other thing I want them to do is spend the next 12 months building new talent. Not finding the latest WWE release. Build new talent. Look, there's nothing wrong with finding a guy who didn't realize his potential, like Ethan Carter III, who's become one of the best signings in TNA history, and making him into a star, a la the Giants with Conor Gillespie. If you don't get the reference, then that means you're not a baseball fan. But there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. But there's something wrong with stealing or signing people who made their name in WWE and are looked at as lower mid-carders in the WWE. Or enhancement talent in the WWE. Because you think about it. If those guys are going to TNA and they're winning their world title, what does that mean for TNA? When Mr. Anderson won the world title, that wasn't a bad thing. When Jeff Hardy won it, that wasn't a bad thing. Because they were main eventers in the WWE. They were on par with people in the WWE who would be winning the title. Like if they were in the WWE, they'd be in the contention for the world title. Same with MVP. Now same with Eric Young and Bobby Roode. You know, they would be winning the world title in WWE. But a guy like Drew McIntyre needed to be built up. He didn't have the name recognition as somebody who could be world champion. Lashley, he did. Partially because of Bellator. But what I want from TNA is to find the next Ethan Carter III. What I want from TNA is to find the next AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels. Hell, what I want from TNA in the next 12 months is to find the next CM Punk. Ring of Honor did it in 2002. TNA did it in 2002. They found people to make the company something different. They've done it with the X Division. Hell, they brought in Reno Scum. They brought in Andrew Everett over the last year. They brought in Braxton Sutter over the last year. But did you ever wonder why Mike Bennett left? Maybe Mike Bennett left because he got more opportunity in Ring of Honor than he did in TNA. Did you ever wonder why Cody Rhodes isn't in TNA full time? Cody Rhodes is the type of person that I'm talking about when I say somebody who could have been WWE World Heavyweight Champion, going to TNA and having the same name value as somebody who holds a WWE title. Because in my opinion, Cody Rhodes should have been WWE Champion, but never was. So him being in TNA and being a top star in the company is worth it. It doesn't make TNA look like the minor leagues. But TNA can't keep depending on the WWE to release their talent. They need to find the next AJ Styles. They need to find the next person that they can build the future around. Yes, Ethan Carter. Yes, Davey, Eddie. You know, people like Braxton Sutter, who, by the way, was one of that X Division match involving Braxton Sutter, Caleb Connolly, Zema Ion, or DJZ rather. That was the highlight of the early March show. Everything else, lackluster. Everything else was lackluster. Why? Because Jeremy Borash and Josh Matthews. I know I said I wanted TNA to do two things, but I'm adding this in at the end. Two things need to be done with the announce team. Number one, stop talking about Jim Ross. Nobody gives a rat's ass what Josh Matthews did in his past. Nobody gives a rat's ass what Josh Matthews did before he got to TNA. Nobody cares. But when you're sitting there watching the show and Pope D'Angelo De Niro is the voice of reason telling the two announcers to get back and commentate, something's wrong. I love Pope as a color commentator. I think he's always had the charisma to be a color commentator. But when you have people like Josh Matthews and Jeremy Borash arguing over who the better announcer is and who's more qualified to be here and how Josh Matthews doesn't want JB to be at ringside, well, my friends, something's wrong. Because the announcer's job is to commentate. The announcer's job is to tell the fans what's going on in the ring and build the story. It isn't to argue and bicker like 12-year-olds. And if they're doing that, then take it backstage, because nobody in the arena and nobody watching the show cares. Nobody cares. And have somebody else join the commentary position. Why? Well, maybe because people like Rich Brennan are on free agency. You want to sign a WWE announcer? Sign a good one. Drop the act of having Josh Matthews play Michael Cole from 2011. Drop it. Because it didn't work with Michael Cole. 2010. Drop it. There's a reason why WWE in 2010 was the worst it's ever been. It was the worst year in WWE history because of heel Michael Cole and because of the long feud between Michael Cole and Jerry the King Lawler. That is one of the many reasons why 2010 was one of the worst years in WWE history. Don't make 2017 one of the worst years in TNA history for the same reason. The other thing is, Jim Ross isn't coming to TNA. Nobody from the WWE is coming to TNA, so don't talk about the WWE on commentary. Nobody cares that Josh Matthews sat in front of 60,000 people, once? On commentary. People watching the show care what's going on in the ring. On the show. People care what's going on in the ring and what the talent in TNA are doing. If people wanted to know what Jim Ross was up to, if people wanted to know how many people Josh Matthews commentated for at WrestleMania, they would look up WWE statistics. They're not watching TNA to find out about WWE. They're watching TNA to find out about TNA. That's the reason why people watch TNA. Because they want to know what's going on in that company. What's going on with those talent. Who Braxton Sutter is. Who the next big signing for TNA is. Not hearing Josh Matthews and Jeremy Borash argue. They don't want to hear that. Why? Because it doesn't work. The announcers shouldn't be the focal point of the show. It's like having an authority figure be the focal point. Non-wrestlers aren't the focal point. They don't deserve to be it. Because they're not the people who are in the ring. They're not the people who the people pay to see. They're not. And if you're an announcer and you think you're one of the people that people pay to see, you're delusional. You're delusional because nobody cares about... Nobody in the crowd paid to see you. Who cares about you? The people watching on Pop TV. Those are the people that care. Why? Because if you do a good job, they'll come back. You do a bad job, you lose a viewer. So what do I want from TNA in the next 12 months? To stop trying to be WWE. To ignore WWE. To take a page out of Vince McMahon's book and pretend that they're the only company that matters. I think it's possible to make Impact Wrestling great again, but you have to gain the idea of tunnel vision. You have to gain the idea of tunnel vision, where TNA is the only company that matters. We're stabilizing the company and focusing on making a great show and not being petty. That's what matters. Another thing that matters is letting go of the past. Moving on from the era of the past and making a new era for TNA. Fixing the legacy that was broken. And the other thing is finding a new face of the company. And no, not Cody Rhodes or Jack Swagger or somebody like that. Have it be somebody like an AJ Styles was in the early 2000s. A relative unknown and somebody that when you see them, you think TNA. Not somebody when you see them, you think WWE or Ring of Honor. The face of TNA needs to be somebody that's synonymous with TNA. Like Ethan Carter III. That's what they need. They need to stabilize the company and focus on making TNA the best it can be. Does it still have potential? It still has potential to be stabilized. It doesn't have the same potential that it did 10 years ago, but it still has the potential to be stabilized and become a stable place for people to work. But they need to focus on making it such. Because right now they aren't. I hope the best for TNA. And even though in this video you may think otherwise, that I don't hope the best for TNA, and that I think that TNA is a bunch of whiny little brats who need to grow up and stop being so petty, and that I've only said bad things about TNA, well, you may be right. But it's just that they're so frustrating. They are so frustrating because I expect so much from them. I've expected so much from them. There was a time when I liked TNA more than WWE. There was a time when I liked TNA more than WWE, and I'm not lying. When TNA was hotter than WWE and doing better. But they fell flat. That's why it's frustrating, because every time they take 2 steps forward, they take 3 steps back. I just want to see 2 steps forward. And the reason why, this is the last thing I'm going to say, and the reason why I'm not going to mention who I want to see as champions in a year from now is because I don't want it to be people who work there now. I'd like to be surprised, especially for the X division, especially for the Knockouts division. The Knockouts division is in transition at this point. The tag team division is surely in transition at this point because what, do they only have 2 tag teams? You know, they're all in transition. And they need to get stable. Because once you stabilize the divisions, once you stabilize plans, once you stabilize the future of the company, you could stabilize the company. That's what needs to be done. And that's why I'm not picking who will be world champion, who will be X Division champion, who will be TNA Grand champion, who will be TNA Knockouts champion or tag team champions next year, because I don't know and I don't want to even predict. Because I want to be surprised. And I want to know that the guy who holds TNA's world title next year is the face of TNA. And not an old face from WWE. Let me know what you think of what I mentioned in this video and what you would like to see TNA do in the next year and a half, or in the next 12 months, down in the comment section below, because as always, feedback is more than welcomed and appreciated. But if you don't want to leave a comment, you can always leave a like, and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this that you can only find right here at Wrestling Express. Till next time, later.